And whoever gets mint ice cream, I'm not telling you to jump off a cliff. I'm telling you to run and dive off the cliff, okay? Because mint ice cream's fucking satanic. Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to another Blender tutorial. This is part 2 of the ice cream duology, the most anticipated duology since, well, I can't really think of any at the moment. But if you haven't seen part 1, make sure to check it out. We made ice cream completely procedurally because, well, I don't know. It just kind of seemed like the right thing to do at the moment. And I took a break in between. I'm making some corn. I'm making some pork. I'm very afraid the house is going to burn down. I'm not a chef. So when I see 30 minutes per pound, but I have 1.7 pounds, I'm like, you should multiply. But what if that's not what they mean? Either way, in this part, we're doing materials of the ice cream. I claimed that this part would be equally hard, but I fucking lied. Okay, this part's easy. So this is what we have so far. If you followed part 1, we're going to have this ice cream, or if you download it via Patreon, we have a procedural waffle cone. We have a procedural ice cream like blobular thing, and we have the procedural sprinkles. For each of these, we're going to make a material, procedurally, of course. So 1, 2, 3 materials. So for the waffle cone, if we isolate that, let's add a set material node, because with geometry nodes, remember, we actually assign our materials, which seems like, you know, a lot of work. Like, why not just apply a material? This is useful because we can separate it into 3 components. So one material here. Our second component, if you remember, is the ice cream blob. So let's, I don't want to visualize that. Let's add another set material there, and then one for the sprinkles. I know this is a mess, but the way I want you to think about this, one material for the cone, one for the ice cream, one for the sprinkles. Which materials are we going to assign? Well, we haven't made any yet. It's kind of like, it's like that phrase, build the thing, build the building, and then they'll come. We haven't built the building, so nobody's coming. Everybody's not horny at all. So 3 materials. 1, it's going to be the cone. 2, it's going to be the cream. And 3, it's going to be the sprinkles. Each one is going to be made slightly differently, which I think is cool. Let's begin with the cone. We'll work bottom to top. So with the cone, and you can see now the material, if we go to rendered mode. Well, I guess we haven't assigned it, but you can see now this is actually affecting the cone. We want to make it look cone-like. So I guess one thing we should do, I should have done this setup before, but whatever. I'm just going to set up some basic HDRI lighting to make sure what we're doing looks good in context. So I just downloaded an HDRI from HDRI Haven. This is what it looks like. It gives us a nice directional kind of environment lighting. And film transparent to hide it. Okay, back to business. The cone. We could just kind of go with like a single kind of cone-like color, something like this, but it would be kind of a shame because we have all this grid attribute math we did from before, which we can import into the shader nodes. And I don't know if this is physically correct, but it definitely makes me feel good, so whatever. Remember, from before in this cone group, this is our kind of a cone map, which we captured as an attribute right here. We want to send this to the shader. So let's take it and scroll to the side and make it a group output. By the way, control spacebar for that little maximize screen trick. Now in this modifier described by the node network, we have an output attribute. I'm going to call this cone because that's what it is. And if we see this attribute here, make sure it's set to geometry like it is. So it's pulling from geometry nodes. You can see we have a mask that isolates the pushed out part of the cone, and black is for the rest. The nice thing about this is now we can set 2 colors for this in a color ramp. Again, not physically accurate, but it makes me feel good, and that's all that matters. So I'm going to pick 2 colors. I mean, right now they're the same, but whatever. Send it through principled BSDF, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the leftmost kind of black 0 selection color and bring that down. So you can see we can get a bit more variability here. Now, again, I don't know if this is technically correct. I guess if you think about how a waffle cone is baked, I guess some parts rise and those parts should be brighter than everything else because they're more baked. I mean, that's how it usually works. So making the other part darker is the same. So before and after just adds a bit of texture. Next, if you think about a cone, it's very rough. Like, it's very, very rough. Like, it's not shiny at all. So we're going to bump up the roughness, and more so, we're going to add a lot of texture onto this. to make it look more like crispy and something that was baked. So noise texture is a great way to do this. If we bring up the scale, you can see we have all this detail. Send it through a bump node because we want it to bump up the surface. So you can see here we have a normal map. Take this, connect it, voila. Now you can see it looks a bit crispier. Make sure the scale is high. I guess it already is. Maybe make it higher. And let's take down the strength so it's not as insane. Okay. So from here, doesn't look too bad, but when you zoom out, I think it's looking pretty decent. So I think the only thing that's not making this look photorealistic at this point, it's not really the material, it's more so the shape. So I should have added some noise for the geometry from before, but whatever. Okay, so I think we're done with the cone material. We can always go back and mess with it. On to the cream. This part's kind of difficult, but I have found some tricks to make it look good. So first of all, what kind of ice cream do you want? You want cherry... Oh, wait, we haven't even assigned it. Whoopsie. So again, set material, this one to the cream. Do you want kind of like a cotton candy, vanilla, cherry, Coke flavor? Or do you want this toxic mint? Whoever gets mint ice cream, I'm not telling you to jump off a cliff. I'm telling you to run and dive off the cliff, okay? Because mint ice cream's fucking satanic. So whatever color we make this, it's still going to kind of look like colored Play-Doh. And here are a couple tricks I've found to make it look more like ice cream. The main one, take subsurface, bring it all the way up. I'm not saying it's physically accurate. I'm just saying it looks good. You can see this kind of makes it look waxy. So let's say this is white to begin with. We take subsurface up. It's still the same color, but it looks a bit more, I don't know, it just looks more edible. I guess it kind of looks like candle wax. But this is a good start. I think it looks better this way. And then for the color of the ice cream, we're no longer going to pick it from the base color because you can see it does nothing. But instead, the subsurface color is going to be our ice cream color. So that's the first trick. For the color, by the way, I'm thinking for my original, I did cotton candy. So I had a mix of two colors. I'm going to do that here. What I did is add a noise texture. Now, normally I would make this higher contrast with a color ramp, but in 3.1 alpha, the build I have, it's broken color ramp for some reason. And I've been filming a lot of tutorials without color ramp, but whatever. Here's a quick trick to make it high contrast. Run it through, listen, I know there's a brightness contrast node, whatever. Take it through power, pick a large power. That's going to make it very high contrast. By the way, let's up the detail, up the distortion. So it kind of looks like two flavors are woven together. Send it through a power, and then we need to make the white parts brighter. So before, after. There we go. And even though color ramp isn't working in the way I said, it is working for picking two colors, obviously, because we've already used it that way. So I'm going to pick a blue, and I'm going to pick a pink. That looks pretty okay. If anything, this distribution's looking a bit off. Something like that. Send this through the subsurface color, and boom, we have a cotton candy ice cream. Again, we do have this issue, it seems, where the blue is overpowering the pink. So I just got to multiply by a larger number. But that looks pretty good. That looks kind of ice creamy. Again, play with the scale, play with the noise parameters to make that look more realistic. But first key takeaway, subsurface scattering, I think makes it look better. And then you pick the subsurface color. And then the second one, which also makes no sense, but just trust me, we want it to be kind of shiny because it is kind of like a liquid slick surface, but it's also not shiny. It has both these properties. So what I found is clear coat. You add some, not too much, because then it's like legitimately shiny like car paint. But you added a tiny bit, and I found that it looks a bit better. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe these things don't even interact, but I found they do. You could also play with the roughness for that shininess. So there you go. That's what I've played with. If you don't like it, well, do your own thing. But I think it looks pretty ice creamy. Finally, for the sprinkles, let's move on to the final material. This time I'm not going to forget. We're going to assign the sprinkles material. We have something a bit more complicated. So each of these had their own problem, right? The cone, we needed to bring in the attribute to make that color ramp. For the ice cream, we needed it to look creamy and edible. So we did subsurface and all this. For sprinkles, our issue is we can pick a color and, we have red sprinkles, whatever. But what we want to do is we want each sprinkle to be its own color. And it's not quite obvious how to do that. So that's the problem with this one. Here's how you do it. Add a geometry node. Go to random per island. It works in this case. Well, not yet, but The idea is it's supposed to work in this case because all our sprinkles are one object, right? They're all part of the same geometry nodes. But each sprinkle is its own island. None of them are connected to each other. So the idea is random per island generates a number between 0 and 1 randomly per sprinkle, per island. But when you zoom in, you're going to see all these sprinkles are actually the same random number because the sprinkle is assigned a random number and then it's instanced, right? So there's no geometry. There's no islands. To fix this, all we need to do is before we apply our material, like with a lot of things, you got to realize instances. It's going to add a bit of computation, but now you can see we have some darker sprinkles, some brighter ones. It's actually seeing this geometry, so it can do the island thing. Now, the idea is that we have this, 0 to 1 random map. And what we want to do is for each sprinkle, we're going to select a color from a distribution, right? So that distribution can have, so we're making cotton candy sprinkles. So I feel like the colors should kind of vibe. So one of them can be white. Another one can be kind of bluish, maybe a darker blue so it doesn't look exactly like the sprinkle. Another one can have, red would look pretty good. Or maybe something a bit more pinkish because it is cotton candy. And maybe let's add, and you can have as many sprinkle colors as you want, as many as you have the patience to add. Some like yellowish orange ones. So you can see it's pulling from this distribution. To make sure that it's not like literally picking from a continuous thing, I'm going to set it to constant. So it literally has a set discrete number of options, distribute from left, and now you can see numbers between 0 and 1 will fall either on the first, second, third, or fourth band. As you can see, we have sprinkles of all colors. Take this, connect it to the base color, let's view it, and yeah, that looks pretty good. Now, from what I understand, I haven't really looked at sprinkles up close, I imagine they're highly glossy in some sense. By the way, did we set shade smooth on these? I believe we did, but let's just make sure. I think we did. So here's before, here's after. Yeah, we definitely set the shade smooth. I imagine they're fairly glossy, so I'm going to bring down the roughness so that they're almost kind of like, not like mirror levels of reflective, but pretty reflective. And I think that's it, right? So if we want to change the colors of our sprinkles, like maybe I want to take all the blue ones and map them to green ones, easy, right? So you just want to pick something that looks good for you. So there is our ice cream. If anything doesn't look right, it's mostly a geometry nodes thing, right? We need to make the sprinkles bigger, add more of them, whatever. But let's say we're happy with our ice cream. Just let's set up a simple scene. I'm going to add a plane. I'm going to select 2 edges, extrude upwards. This is how I do most of my renders. So I make kind of like half a cube. I select these 3 edges, Control B to bevel, make more divisions. And now we have not only HDRI lighting, but some kind of bounce lighting setup, which looks pretty good. For this, I would recommend, for the material, increase the roughness and pick a color that kind of vibes with this. So white doesn't look bad, but since this is cotton candy, maybe a kind of light pink would look good. So now you just set up your camera, and we'll wrap up the tutorial soon. I know this part doesn't matter, right? So we're going to pivot from the 3D cursor so I can rotate the camera 90 degrees from the middle and it's still facing it. Take the camera, maybe set it to orthographic. I don't know, that's a controversial move. Zoom in and move the camera upwards and zoom out. And there you go. That's kind of like your basics, right? The rest of this is I set dress the thing with adding some sprinkles by adding sprinkles to the background. I moved my camera, and let's just see what the original looked like. Probably should have saved that, but whatever. You can see it's basically the same thing. More carefully chosen colors and stuff like that, but that's the idea. This one looks a bit better because I played with the colors a bit more. But you can see the sprinkles are randomly distributed. We have this noise cotton candy thing. Same kind of thing, as you can see. I picked from 3 colors. But either way, that's the end of the tutorial. How long have we gone? 14 minutes. I said this part would be quick, but it wasn't. Okay, anyways, this is the end of the 2-part duology. Duology? Either way, I always wrap up these tutorials with a Patreon kind of brainwashing segment, so everybody get those binaural headphones on. If you want to see, I was going to say if you want to see more tutorials in the future early. Let me restart. First of all, thank you all 750 some active patrons, and why should you, somebody who isn't a patron, join? Click that link in the description. Why? 3 benefits. 1, you can watch tutorials early. So for example, for this duology, while you were watching the first one, people on Patreon could already see this part 2. They already had the full series. So you could watch tutorials a day early, sometimes even a week early. Second main benefit, blend files. This, you can get the blend file. You don't need to make it. And any blend file I've made over the last 3 years, which is hundreds at this point, and project files, you can download them. And 3, exclusive tutorials. I try to make at least once a month. Sometimes I make a tutorial series a month. Those go more in depth. So I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's already a pretty short tutorial. So Patreon, check it out. And for the rest of you, thank you for watching this tutorial series. Your penis is surely bigger. Your hair is surely longer. And you know a bit about materials. So thanks for watching. And I'll see you whenever I make another, I suppose. And if you want to stick around.